what are your possibilities to get these guys? I think that would be also for Germany very important if we reach the case that sex buying would be forbidden. We know that in trafficking, it's very difficult to convey the prosecutors because they control their victims. While if you attack the pimps, that should be easier. But my question is, how exactly are you conveying them?
Yeah, that is a very good question, which I think is when I visit Germany. When I visit Germany and I sit down with colleagues in Germany, and when I get to talk about how we arrest pimps, that is something that I feel that, I mean, that they really, really want, because I feel that the German police are totally lacking the tools and the laws to go effectively after the pimps. Because just as you said, it's nowadays quite difficult to prove human trafficking, and that is not only for Germany. It goes for Sweden as well. It goes for many countries within Europe, because the pimps, I mean, organized crime will always adapt. If they methods that they used in the 80s, 90s, when they get sentenced for uh, really, really violent types of recruiting methods, crimes, and so on, they will try to adapt in order to avoid police. And we know today that at least in Sweden and in many other countries, I know for sure that if the prosecutors cannot prove that the woman was tricked, lured, forced into prostitution, then it's difficult to prove human trafficking. But here we have the big difference between Sweden and Germany, that we have a zero tolerance on pimps according to our pimping legislation. And that is one of the most important tools for us, the pimping legislation, because our pimping legislation has the same maximum penalty as the human trafficking legislation, which is maximum penalty of 10 years. And if we can prove that the woman was actually forced, that she has been promised a normal job and was lured to Sweden and stuff like that, then automatically the human trafficking law kicks in. But if we cannot prove that, if the woman actually, she was aware of that she was going to Sweden and do prostitution, and she actually even replied to a so-called job offer on the Telegram chat application, where some kind of agency promised her to go to Sweden for 2 weeks and earn a lot of money. 50-50, a 50-50 deal. 50% goes to the pimps and 50% goes to the woman, and she can sell sex in Sweden. She's perfectly aware about the conditions. She's perfectly aware about what she's going to do. Then we cannot use the human trafficking legislation. But then we have the pimping legislation, because the pimping legislation says that we don't care. We don't care if the woman was aware. We don't care if this even happened on the initiative of the woman. We had a case where two women from Latvia came to Stockholm to sell sex. And they actually hired a man as a driver and protection, because they felt that they wanted someone to help them and be with them, so he could keep them safe, right? And we turn up at the hotel and we find this pimp hiding somewhere, I don't know, under the bed or the wardrobe or something. And these two women are being very honest with us, say, hey, this is just a big misunderstanding. He's not a pimp. He's not been forcing us to do anything. We've actually recruited him to help us out. And I say, we don't care. We don't want pimps here. It doesn't matter if you hire them or not. He will go straight to jail. So this man was actually sentenced, maybe 6 months in jail or something for pimping. And this law is really, really good, because it's a zero tolerance on all kinds of pimping. I mean, everything that you can come up with in order to help someone to sell sex is actually legal. And I think that is one of the most important things also for Germany. I think you need to update your pimping legislation, because now, as I've been told, a pimp is not considered a pimp unless he takes more than 50%
Right.
of the income of the woman, and that's just horrifying. So I think in order to adopt the Nordic model, you also have to automatically update your pimping legislation, so you get a real proper functioning pimping legislation that the police actually can enforce. Because when I was in the streets of I mean, I had the opportunity to see a lot of red light districts in Germany, and it's just terrible to see the pimps actually standing on the other sides of the street.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The police doing nothing.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, if a pimp in Sweden is very careful, so he tries to hide his activity. He says, "Okay, I'm supporting this girl." How do you get him?
Yeah, and that as I said before, the pimps will adapt, and I can see it very clearly during my years. When I started this job, we had a lot of pimps coming here from Romania, coming here from different countries. Now it's difficult for us to find them. They're scared, and many times we realize that they hide in their home countries. Not to mention all the women that's coming in right now from Colombia. We have a lot of women coming in from Colombia, and they never have their pimps with them. They don't even know who their pimps are, because they were recruited through Telegram, an agency that they've never even met. So, and that is a real challenge. And I would say it's almost impossible to track down those pimps. So, what is the option? The option is to go after the sex buyers and just disrupt the market and make Sweden and Stockholm a bad business for the pimps. But with the digitalized world as we live in today, the pimps can more and more sit in their home countries, still controlling the woman, and that's a challenge.
But in Sweden, if they are in Sweden, how do you get them there? Is it the contact with the Johns, or is it the contact with the women, or have you to prove that they got money from the women?
Oh, how we find the pimps? Well, if the pimp's actually in Sweden,
Yes.
then we can find him in a lot of different ways. I think it's important to mention that when you go after the sex buyers, they will automatically lead you to the pimps. I don't know how many cases we've had where we've come to an address and we're sitting down and we're waiting for sex buyers to show up, and there is a man coming, and we believe initially that he's a sex buyer, and he goes up to the apartment. 10 minutes later, he comes out, and we arrest him for the buying of sex. And we realized, hey, this is not a sex buyer. This guy has 2,500 euro in cash on himself. He's been collecting money at the apartment. He's a pimp. So that has happened many times, and so we can arrest them by physical surveillance. Sometimes when we do welfare checks, we find. I'm actually going up to court now in just 1 or 2 weeks. We did a welfare check on a Swedish woman actually, but just before we arrived to the address, we could see that a man left the apartment. We thought it was a sex buyer leaving, but it turns out it was the woman's pimp who was going to leave the apartment and wait outside while the sex buyer was coming. The sex buyer was actually us that had done a fake booking.
Okay.
But you can find them through physical surveillance, but you can also, of course, find them by traditional investigational work. For example, two women from Colombia are sitting in an apartment, and they do not even speak English. You can investigate that by contacting the apartment owner, who tells you that I rented out my apartment through Airbnb. This is the name of the renter. And suddenly you have a name, you have an identity, and you can work with that. So, but the law is the most important. And I feel that Germany doesn't have a proper pimping law. And that is not my conclusion. That is the conclusion of German officers.
I agree, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So